Welcome to the Open Mic Night podcast. This is episode 75 for March 30th, 2016.
So now let's get to the main event. It's phenomenal.
Welcome to the Open Mic Night podcast. If you are looking for Apple news, tips, or tricks, you have found the right spot. We are an Apple-focused podcast. We try and talk about anything that relates to Apple. So all the big news that comes out, we're going to talk about it. And we also hope to give you guys some insight into better ways to use your Apple equipment, whether that be your laptop, your desktop, your iPhone, your iPad, whatever it is. Hopefully we can teach you guys some new things. So tonight we have got a lot of Apple news to cover. And then we've got another top 5 for you guys. And coming up at the end is some tips and tricks. And also Colin might be considering getting a new phone, and we will talk about that as well. But before we get started, I do want to mention that this is part of the 2980 network. That is my network. So if you head on over to 2980network.com, you can find all the show notes, subscription links, anything you need for this podcast and also for the Suit and Scrubs podcast. It's all out there. But this show is also a part of the Geeks Network. TheGeeksNetwork.com is where you can go to find a compilation of a bunch of different technology-related podcasts. If you like technology, head on out to TheGeeksNetwork.com. I'm sure you can find a podcast there that will fill your needs. So we appreciate being a part of their network, and we encourage you guys to head out there and check out some of the other awesome podcasts, including the other show I do on Thursday nights with Mr. Jim Collison of theaverageguy.tv, Home Gadget Geeks. That show is over there as well. We also want to thank Roger from WLMNradio.com for supporting us and playing us on terrestrial radio out in Grafton, West Virginia. So big thank you to them. WLMNradio.com is where you can find all of their content and stuff like that. And they're adding some new shows all the time. So it's always it's an ever-changing lineup over there at WLMNradio.com. All right. Well, we are back this week, and we have another top 5, like I mentioned earlier, that we will get to soon. That is because of you guys who filled out the survey. We talked about this last week, but I really did like all of the comments that we got. And so, hey, we're using it again. We're going to put in another top 5 later in the show. But of course, one of the major things that you guys said in the survey was that you do like the co-host. So I decided to bring him back. Colin, how's it going, man?
It's going well. I'm just scrolling through Twitter really quickly.
That's all right. That's all right. Hey, that intro is probably long enough. You might get to the end of your Twitter feed by the time I'm done with it. There were no comments about the length of my intro, but if it's something you want to talk about, we can definitely do that.
Nope.
But no, so we will go ahead and kind of jump right into things. First, I just want to start with a personal story relating to me. And if you follow me on Twitter, which I suggest if you guys listen to the show, if you guys are regular listeners, follow me over at Uyghur Tech, WIEGER Tech, because that's where I announce when we're going live. If we're not having a show, Twitter is the first place I go. And I also share a lot of really cool Apple-related stories out there with tips and tricks and stuff like that, so you guys can follow me out there. But if you did, you noticed that I jumped the gun a little bit earlier this week when I woke up. I believe it was on Saturday morning. It was on Saturday morning. I woke up and my phone said that my Apple Watch had an update available and that it was ready to install. So of course, being the Apple nerd I am, I wanted to jump on that right away. So I did run the update, and it was starting to take a little bit, but about 20 minutes into the update, the Apple Watch flipped over from the updating screen to a big red exclamation point inside a circle. And I said, well, that's definitely not a good sign. So I pulled it off the charger and went to try and do anything with it, and it was not responsive to absolutely anything. My phone said that it wasn't connected anymore, and so it wasn't even seeing it as a connection. So I did some basic Googling, was led to an Apple support article that if you ever get the red exclamation point, a simple reset of the Apple Watch should work. A reset meaning you hold the crown and the side button at the same time for about 10 seconds, and it will restart the watch. Now, that did not work. And the only other suggestion on the Apple site was, hey, if that doesn't work, yeah, you're going to need to contact support. So contacted support. They didn't know what to do. They had me unpair it from my phone, try resetting it like 10 more times. None of that was going to work. So they scheduled me a Genius Bar appointment, and that was interesting because when I walked in, as soon as I handed it to the guy, he's like, oh yeah, it's not good. It's like, oh, well, good to know. You know, a lot of times they're very upbeat and positive, like, oh, we'll be able to fix this for you and stuff like that. But this was not one of those times. So he takes it back. He does the reset. When that does not work, he immediately is just like, yep, we're going to have to send this in. And that was kind of surprising to me because I was like, you don't have the stuff here? And he's like, no, we don't have any of the equipment here to reset this. Probably a bad ISO file, meaning the update was corrupt or it didn't fully download, something like that, and it completely bricked the watch. Now, Colin, the thing why I bring this up is that I find it extremely interesting. Well, maybe not too interesting, but it's kind of a pitfall of the Apple Watch that there's no way the user can plug it into their computer at all. So the only USB cord you have is to plug into a power brick and it charges it. But besides that, if you want to restore this thing or anything like that, you better hope that it still connects to your phone because your phone is the only thing that can control this. And in situations like this, it was a complete pain in the butt. I mean, I just feel like we're in 2016. That shouldn't be the only way we can get these things restored. But I don't know.
I was going to say at the same time, we're in 2016. Everyone wants everything to be so wireless and like
that's true.
No, how many people still connect their phone to their computer to upload or download or whatever it may be?
That's true. And I guess the only time I ever do it is in these situations where I need to do like a full restore. If something's like completely gone wrong, then that's when I do it. So it was just kind of shocking to me because I never really thought about if something went wrong with the Apple Watch's software, what would I do? So there is a port on the Apple Watch that they can access the watch. It's actually hidden under the band. Now, obviously, we heard about that back when this was announced. And people found that port and like, oh, maybe they'll open this up and we can use it for bands that have extra battery in them or certain other accessories. But as of now, that port is still locked down. So I'm guessing pretty for sure that is how they're going to access the watch. But that was on Saturday. They sent it in. It is now Wednesday, and I still have not heard back from them yet. So he said hopefully it would be Wednesday or Thursday. So I'm hoping by tomorrow I get a call with my watch because it's one of those like you don't realize what you got till it's gone thing. Because I still find myself trying to check the time. Surprisingly, the one thing I use the Apple Watch for most is checking the time. Surprise, surprise, it's a watch. So that's the only thing I actually miss. I contemplated going to Walmart and getting like a $10 watch because of how many times I went to go check the time and didn't have it. So I know it's like a total first world problem thing, but it was just interesting to me that was the process that you need to do to restore your watch. So going back to the fact that I jumped the gun, I hopped on Twitter and Facebook and I said, hey, if you guys get the update, you may not want to do it right away. I think it's actually like a bad update, but it was not. I actually posted this over. If you guys want another fantastic Apple podcast, the Mac Geek Gab is fantastic and far more technical. If you guys are into the technical side, they're great. And they have a Facebook group, and I went over there and posted, and a lot of people said, hey, I think this might be an isolated incident because I've updated, it's been fine. And I was the only one in the entire group that had an issue. So that being said, this is my correction moment that you are good to download the update. This was a isolated incident, and as long as you don't have the same problem I did with a corrupt ISO or a incomplete download, then you should be good to go. But yeah, just a fun fact that that is how you have to handle things when your Apple Watch goes bad. All right, Colin, we are going to move into our first news story of the night. And this one we alluded to last week because we talked about how Apple, during their announcement, addressed the issue with the FBI and not hacking in, or giving them pretty much a back door to the phone when the police department or federal government, whoever has the phone, wants to get into a criminal's phone. And so Apple said, hey, we're standing up for this. We are not doing this for them. We're not giving them a back door. We're not granting them access. This is not our data. This is our users' data and stuff like that. But we had a recent update to the story. Colin, do you kind of want to fill us in on what happened here?
Well, the most recent news to come out was, I think, either late last week or the middle of last week, where the FBI came out and kind of took back their court or pushed the hearing that they had asked for, pushed it back, or asked for an extension. And normally when that happens, either something is very wrong where they know they're going to lose, or they don't need it anymore. And lo and behold, the latter was true. They apparently figured out the way to get into the phone, which I found funny because after the fact of this all came out, it came to my attention that Edward Snowden, the famous NSA whistleblower who is currently residing in Russia, was on a Russian radio station or something of the sort, and said when the FBI first came out asking for the help, basically calling BS on them, saying, yeah, you don't have a way to get into this. Real funny. Lo and behold, look at that.
Yeah. So the FBI saying, hey, we actually got into it. We're good to go. Now, the story kind of revolving back to Apple with this is that now Apple is kind of trying to play catch up and trying to figure out exactly how they got into the phone. Obviously, this is something that if they were able to get in, Apple wants to patch that because that is a vulnerability that they want to patch. But the problem with this is they don't know how they did it. And obviously, they don't have access to the phone to reverse engineer what they did. So they're kind of stuck now in this moment where they weren't strong enough with security as they thought they were. And now they need to go back and patch some things up. Now, that seems like a much harder task than it would seem. But Colin, do you think it's something that is the government always going to be one step ahead of Apple in this? Or is it worth Apple's time and effort to even look into this and try and reverse engineer and trying to find what that backdoor was?
In my mind, I feel like it's over. Like, and when I say it's over, not like it's the end of days, but right. It's more just, I understand that they believe that there's a vulnerability, but the entire time people have just assumed like the government had access. They knew how to get in it. They have the best hackers, whatever you want to call them, data specialists, like compute, like development specialists, whatever it may be. They have these people at their disposal. These people are contracted to do the things to get into these kind of phones, regardless of how they might get in, whether it be of legal means or illegal means. I really don't think Apple has a vulnerability by any sense. It's a singular event. They aren't saying we got into any phone that we've ever tried getting into. They said we got into this phone, so we're good.
Right. And I would kind of agree with that, with the caveat being, Apple does have a responsibility to try and keep things as secure as they can. And obviously, they're going to try and put as much effort as they can into figuring out what the problem was and trying to patch it. But I think the bigger issue here is everyone was focusing on Apple. And Apple, like, oh, man, Apple, like, what are you going to do? How are you going to react to this? Like, how much manpower are you going to put behind trying to find the back door? And I think really as a general public, we should be looking into making a policy on whether we think this is right or wrong. I mean, this was really the first instance, and I think it was why we mentioned this last week, that maybe it was the FBI's intention when they made this request public to kind of get the American people's thoughts on this issue. So rather than putting the blame on companies or saying, Apple, it's your duty, let's make a policy. Let's start looking into this and developing what we think should be the law on, is this okay? Is it not okay? What resources can they use? And yes, I know the law has already, these are already in progress and it's kind of a gray area in the courts right now. But I think we have enough background now, enough information to make an educated attempt at putting a policy in place on this. So that's really kind of where I wanted to go there, was that I think we've kind of missed the issue if we start talking about Apple. But on the same note, I do think Apple does have a responsibility to try and find the vulnerability, and they do. But I mean, we've seen this in the past. I mean, how many people, I mean, back before iOS was as feature rich as it is now, people used to jailbreak their phones all the time. Now, obviously that's not cracking into the phone in the same regard as the government did, but in a general sense, they're still going around what Apple has in place. So this is no surprise that they were able to do it, but just interesting that Apple's trying to play catch up.
Yeah.
I
mean, that's going to be any company though. You're always playing catch up.
Oh, it is. It is. I mean, and really, I mean, look at Anonymous. Look at this group that really can just do whatever they want when they want. They have the resources. They have the most talented technical people as a part of their group, and they go after social justice in a way that governments and companies cannot. So, yeah, it's interesting. We're always going to have that debate back and forth when we look at those issues. All right, so last fall, we talked about how the MLB was allowing certain devices in the dugout, and then that also led to a conversation about the Microsoft deal with the NFL. If you watched any NFL at all, there's no way you could have missed the huge Microsoft Surface banners all across the sidelines, and every time a coach or players were sitting on the sideline, it's just labeled Surface everywhere. So it was obviously very prominent, that Microsoft had a deal with the NFL, and the NFL was using all Microsoft Surface tablets on the sideline as their tool of choice. Well, Apple now gets their shot at the big leagues. There we go.
Pun.
There we go. So the Apple has struck a deal with the MLB, and they are actually going to be providing iPad Pros to all of the MLB teams, which is kind of interesting. So Microsoft has the NFL. Now Apple has the MLB. So there's actually going to be a new kind of specialized app just for the teams called MLB Dugout. And it's going to be kind of similar to the NFL style, where the coaches can look at statistics, they can look at past videos, all sorts of analytical stuff to better their coaching and better the team. Now, back when we mentioned this back in the fall, we were all kind of talking about, okay, technology's place in sports and all of that stuff. It was, we kind of had the debate on, do you really want to ruin, the tradition of the game by introducing technology to it? And I think both of us came to the conclusion that it's all right. It makes things better. It betters the coaching. They're going to use it when they're outside anyway. So why not allow them in? Colin, is that still your feeling that, okay, yes, this is an okay thing. It's not ruining any sort of unwritten rule of tradition?
No, I mean, I don't think it's ruining anything, because in any case, the way this Dugout app is set up is that it gives them real-time stats and stats in general. So, I mean, the same thing that they would have had available to them, where it would come to a stat sheet and kind of figuring out matchups. And now, especially with them trying to make the game a little bit quicker when it comes to the coach's challenge, if the app has replay on it where they can quickly see a replay of something that they want to challenge, they don't have to make a call down to the clubhouse to talk to the video guy. They can just see it right there and be like, yes or no. That will shorten the process. You're still only going to be allowed the same amount of challenges. It's not going to be like, oh, I can challenge every single play. No, you're going to challenge what you want to challenge, like they have been, and then leave it at that. So to me, it's kind of a cool thing. Apple definitely was laying the groundwork last year with providing the Apple Watches like they did for the All-Star game, which we talked about with Ned Yost being like, Apple gave it to me. I'm going to wear it. I can't do anything with it if my phone's not on me, so let's get over this.
Exactly. Well, and I think, too, I'm all about, okay, sports are meant for entertainment. We are all meant to be entertained by sports, and anything that helps the coaches put up better matchups that are going to be more entertaining for me to watch, I'm down for, right? I mean, they're not putting these out in the field. This is not with the players. It's meant for the coaching. So I'm all about anything that provides a better matchup, so I don't have to watch any 14-2 clobberings or anything like that. I'm down for some entertainment and some better matchups, but yeah, I don't know if this will have that much of an effect, but I'm just saying that's kind of where I stand on the whole thing. But kind of cool to see that Apple finally got in this, and PTD in the chat room, which good time to mention, if you guys are not listening live, Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. Central Time, which is 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific, you guys can come out and join us live at 2980network.com/live. And part of that is being in the chat room like PTD is tonight. And he said, when you're talking about, you mean Microsoft's iPads that everyone was talking about? And in the fall, all the announcers would refer to them as iPads on accident. And everyone's like, oh yeah, they all got the iPads on the side, because the iPad was just synonymous with tablet. And yeah, I don't know if that worked to Microsoft's advantage or not. Maybe it drew more attention to that, hey, there's more than just the iPad, because then the story was, hey, stop calling these iPads. They're not. Yeah. So they got a little bit of free publicity there, which I kind of worked out in their favor.
I loved that, because it was the first game of the year that someone called it an iPad, and then 2 games later, Jay Cutler called it an off-brand iPad.
Did he really?
Yep.
Jay Cutler.
Just didn't care.
Is he known to be a comedian, or does he just make these funny comments from time to time and we all enjoy them?
No, he's just such a jerk.
All right. I like it. All right. So the next piece of news is that if you updated to 9.3, you enjoyed a lot of great benefits, which we talked about last week, night mode and stuff like that. But one of the next features, or one of the features for certain customers, is that Wi-Fi calling should now be available to any carrier that offers it. So Verizon customers were stuck without Wi-Fi calling, which was interesting because I came from Sprint where I had Wi-Fi calling and it was fantastic. Wi-Fi calling being, if you don't have good signal, you can connect to Wi-Fi and make phone calls that way. Colin, you had this on T-Mobile a long time ago, didn't you? I mean, you were one of the first. I think T-Mobile and whatever phone you had, you were able to use Wi-Fi as your cellular network, weren't you?
Wi-Fi calling came out with the 5S, I believe.
I thought it was like on an old Android phone that you were able to get some sort of Wi-Fi connectivity, but maybe not. Maybe it wasn't Wi-Fi calling. Maybe it was just a different set of things. Never mind.
I was going to say that old Android I had, it would connect to Wi-Fi, but it didn't have like Wi-Fi capabilities that like an Apple product would have, where when you're on Wi-Fi, you don't need service.
Okay, so never mind. But Verizon customers now have Wi-Fi calling, which was missing before. So now I'm on Verizon. It was nice to see that they included it, but Verizon is doing it a little bit different. And to my understanding, so is AT&T and some of the other big carriers. But let me describe to you how it was on Sprint, and then I'll describe how it was on Verizon. So on Sprint, basically, if you enabled Wi-Fi calling anytime you were on Wi-Fi, it connected to the Sprint Wi-Fi service. So if you were on Wi-Fi at all, that is what it was going to use, which was good and bad. Back when Sprint first enabled it, if I was on Wi-Fi calling, I made a call and then I left the Wi-Fi area. So a lot of times this would happen when I was in my apartment. I would walk down to my car and leave. The call would drop. So Verizon, though, and now the newer technology for Verizon, AT&T, and some of the other ones, basically what it's going to do is it's going to say, hey, do I have a good LTE connection or not? So if I'm like right now in my apartment, I have a great coverage here at my apartment. So I'm on Wi-Fi, but it is not using the Verizon Wi-Fi calling. It will still use the LTE network for that. So a lot of customers were turning it on, setting it all up, and then they were on Wi-Fi and it still was not doing the VSW Wi-Fi. And so they were confused. They thought they had set it up and they were kind of confused why it's not on. So the way that works is it's only going to activate itself if it has a poor cellular connection strength. That is the only time it's going to turn on. So when I'm at work in a huge concrete building in the middle of downtown, it turns on because I don't get great LTE, but out here it's nice. It doesn't do it. So I actually think that's the better way to run Wi-Fi calling. I don't want to use it when I don't have to. First of all, because I love the HD voice feature of voice over LTE. So when I'm on an LTE and I'm calling another Verizon customer, it connects and it sounds crystal clear, almost like a FaceTime audio call, which is great. So I kind of like that new way of running the Wi-Fi calling. And so PTD says I can use Wi-Fi calling and texting via an Android phone using Republic Wireless. Now, PTD has mentioned Republic Wireless here and over on Home Gadget Geeks, and I need to check them out because the pricing he keeps bringing up is amazing, and they always have all the features like right away. So I don't know. I need to check into Republic Wireless. I don't know if they're here in Omaha because I've never seen any sort of advertising or anything for them. Colin, have you heard of Republic Wireless at all?
I have not. No.
Yeah, I have not either. But Colin, on your phone, because you have the 5, Wi-Fi calling is still not available, correct?
It's not available on the 5, at least.
Right. Okay. That's what I was just making sure. So it looks like the Wi-Fi calling is still only on the 5S and above. Now, to just a little side note on the LTE HD voice on voice over LTE, all these sort of technologies get really confusing when you start talking about your carrier. But voice over LTE pretty much is high definition voice calls, so you will notice the difference. And the one big change coming, hopefully, they've said, by the end of 2016, is that you will be able to make an HD call to someone on a different network. So right now you're limited Verizon to Verizon, AT&T to AT&T, but hopefully by the end of 2016, I will be able to call someone on a different network and still have that HD voice. So that should be coming by the end of the year, but you never know with these things. They always end up getting pushed back and pushed back. And PTD, I forgot, he is in Omaha, so it is here. So I'll have to check them out. Republic Wireless. I'll have to see what their prices are. I'm guaranteed they can whoop the prices of Verizon because my bill on Verizon is astronomically high. Just absolutely insane. All right, so now we are going to move into a top 5 backed by popular demand. And tonight's top 5 is things that we wish Apple would do. So this is a continuation on the rant section that we used to do, and we're going to kind of bring it back here. And it's not really rants, but it's just things that we wish Apple would do differently or change or add. And I thought it'd be a fun little segment because I want to get you, the listeners, input on this. So when you guys listen to this episode and you're listening right now, think of some things that you want them to change. And if we don't mention them here, you can either post them on the Facebook group, you can email me, Mike at 2980network.com, or hit me up on Twitter, and we will talk about those next week. But I thought Colin and I would each make a list of 5, and we'll just start at 5 and go down to 1 being the thing we would wish they would do the most. So, Colin, let's actually start with you, and we'll start back at number 5.
Okay, my number 5 for things I wish Apple would do is offering a better standard headphone, or at least a choice in what headphone you get. And I understand the cost aspect of that. If you can select a choice, so if you were to order online, say, you can go through and kind of select, like, I want the iPhone SE at the whatever memory, and I want it to be this color on this provider. The last thing it should ask is, what type of headphone do you want? Which is no cost to you. Or you can get, whether maybe it's a Beats headphone, maybe it's the one like the weird ear pod, not so much these ones where it's
right. Yeah,
the one that came with the phone. Yeah, but the one that like has the little, like, I don't know, they're actually kind of crappier for the $60.
Yeah. The ear.
I forget what they're called, but they like mold to your ear or whatever.
Yeah, they're actually terrible. I had a pair, and they're absolutely awful. Yeah.
So to me, it would be a nice addition where if you're purchasing the phone, you had that choice, and the way to get around that, you don't have to sell the headphone at cost, because or not at cost, at the retail price. Sell them at cost. Because for you're already making a profit and then some,
right,
on the iPhone itself. Having like the Power Beats, the ones that you have, the little earbud type almost that go over, sell those at like $70.
Well, this is a fantastic idea, especially with their partnership with Beats. Like, you would probably get Beats out there. I mean, this has become iconic, right? These headphones are iconic of Apple. They have been in advertisements. Everyone knows these as Apple, and that's because they're given away free with every phone. So again, like you said, they wouldn't need to be free, but if you subsidize those headphones with this is a great idea. I didn't think about this, but something better than these, just the quality of these isn't the best. I'll admit the sound isn't terrible from them, but you're totally right. Having the option when you buy the phone to move up would be fantastic, especially because after like 3 iPhones, I don't need 10 pairs of these. I mean, it's nice because I do break them, but it'd be nice to upgrade every once in a while.
Exactly. And to me, like, I'm a big headphones person. Like, you wouldn't notice it because I always either use these or I have like an old pair of Beats at work as over ears that I wear. But to me, I always have headphones in. I'm always listening to music. I would like a choice when purchasing something. Like, again, doesn't have to be sold or given for free. Maybe it doesn't have to be full price. Somewhere in the middle, you're already making all your money back. So
right.
And the amount of people that I think would opt in for that and purchase the other type of headphone, I just feel like you'd get so many more off the shelves. Because how many people are going out and just buying a pair of Beats just because?
I agree. Yeah. So, I mean, really, you start to look at that, and most people, these will be good enough for them, and they're not going to go out and spend more money. But if at the time of purchase, that's an option, oh, yeah, I'll spend an extra $30. I'll spend an extra 50, 70, whatever it is.
You don't feel as bad.
Right. You don't feel as bad. It's coming with the new phone anyway. It's already part of the purchase. You are totally right. They would sell a ton more if they offered them at the time of the phone sale. I like that one, Colin, as a nice thing to wish for.
Apple should hire me as their marketing guy.
They should. And who knows? You might be predicting the future here if this whole next iPhone not having a headphone port thing comes true, and their Lightning connector, or they're relying straight on Bluetooth, whatever, however they go about it. You might be onto something. Maybe they do offer some different options for people. Yep. But all right, so I'm going to move on to my number 5. My number 5 is iMessage on Windows. So it is no secret, at least no secret on Jim's show. Maybe it is a little bit secret on this show, that I have actually become a little bit of a Windows user. I do have a Windows. I have the Kangaroo. Jim got me into the Windows world. He sent me over a new Windows machine, and so I've been using it. And I have to admit, I actually don't mind it. I really like it for certain aspects of what I do. But man, the one thing holding me back from ever making a Windows machine my daily laptop, it couldn't be my laptop, and it really can't be my full-time desktop, is simply iMessage. It's probably my number one used app on my computer. While I'm doing work, I have iMessage up because, it's just easier to use iMessage than to get out your phone. You're already typing, you have your keyboard, I can do it faster, and so things like that. So I really wish that, they already have iCloud. In a way, it's not a great setup on iCloud for Windows, but it's there. And so I don't think iMessage would be too difficult for them, but this is one of those wishes that will not come true. Apple will not put iMessage on the Windows machine. I'll just call it from here on out. But it'd be nice. I see a lot of people when, if you're on the Android side and you use Hangouts is cross-platform. You can use it wherever on an iPhone, on a Mac, on a Windows, on any sort of machine, you can get access to your Hangout messages. And so I just kind of wish that iMessage was the same sort of thing, especially because every single one of most of my really close friends that I text on a daily basis all have iPhones, so it works with iMessage. And now that iMessage can send text messages as well, it works perfectly. I use it all the time. So that's my number 5 wish.
Okay.
Not going to come through.
My number 4, I think you actually kind of made a mention of this last week, that this is a thing. I just didn't know it was. But a price drop for a new phone through a trade-in system, which I didn't know it was a thing, that Apple had a kind of trade in your phone.
Well, I didn't either. And honestly, I don't know too many details about it. We might want to look into that for next week too. But
well, for me, it would be one of those things where if it's a phone in good condition, a phone that still works, a phone that they can maybe kind of either refurbish or like they've been doing, just recycle it and use the parts that are still perfectly all well and good. Somehow a price drop on a new phone. Yep. Doesn't have to be the top of the line phone. It could be the lesser phone, which for me, perfect. Just some kind of price drop that you get when you turn your phone in, when you want to buy a new one.
Right.
I know it sounds, it's like it's really needy, but I mean, when you're selling phones that the best ones probably start at $800, let's be real here.
Exactly. So I just did a real quick search for, because as Colin mentioned, this is somewhat of a thing that we just haven't looked into too much. But they do have their trade-in program, apple.com/iPhone/trade-in. Looks like you can trade up to a new phone for as low as $10 a month. So you could cut your payment plan in about half by trading in something. Now it's all going to depend on what phone you had, what phone you're getting, and stuff like that. But looks like it is possible. Now, you're obviously then going through Apple, so I'm not sure how that integrates into your Verizon or anything like that. But yeah, interesting. I agree, and we should see how easy that is, because I'm not due for a new phone for a long time though, so I'm not going to be using that for a while. But Colin, you might be, so maybe you see how it goes. All right, so my number 4 is thicker iPhones with better battery life. And this is just something that has just been grinding my gears. Every single announcement that they have for the past few years with the iPhone is thinner is better. And that, for me, I think I would much rather have, I would even say almost twice as thick. Probably not. I probably would end up liking that too much, but almost for a lot longer battery life. If my battery could last 2 or 3 days, I could go on a weekend trip or a road trip and not have to charge it. It would make things so much easier. Now, Apple obviously came out with their own battery case with an ugly bump. It's one of the ugliest cases Apple has ever made. But I think that was an acknowledgement that, okay, yeah, maybe our phones do need a little bit more juice, but they just haven't answered that with, hey, okay, fine. We don't need to be slim. Not everything needs to be this, the thinness of a piece of paper, and we can add some battery life in. So that would be my wish. And I do think they might actually do that this fall. I think they might actually give us a little bit more, but that's all based on prediction. But I hear a lot of people asking for better battery life on all sorts of different devices, but especially the phone. And I'll admit, on the iPhone S, iPhone 6S Plus, it's not too bad. The battery is actually decent, but I still could not go a full 2 days with that battery. I could probably do maybe a day and a half if I'm using it sparingly, but that would be my wish. I wish they would just get over the thinness thing and just go with a good-looking phone that is thicker and has better battery life.
The thing about that, though, when it comes to batteries, is one thing I've heard. I can't remember where I heard it. This is always my thing, where I've heard something I just don't remember.
Yeah,
I didn't come up with it, but the thing they were saying that when it comes to longer battery life, people have to make a choice. I know you're saying like go back to a thicker phone,
right?
But the other thing that you would need is a larger battery. So the space needed for that battery is going to take away some other aspects. It's going to take away it's going to take away RAM. It might take away memory. You're going to need to have this push and pull. And so the batteries, there's actually been stories coming out that Apple has been looking into new types of batteries instead of staying with the lithium ion. So going to a battery that might be better suited to provide that longer amount of days. But I feel like you're still wanting 4 days worth of phone power. People shouldn't be using Spotify all day or on Snapchat. So I mean,
again, if I turned off everything
and never used your phone,
and never used it, but I'm like, that's the point. So yeah, I mean, I could definitely I probably could get it to 2 days if I turned off a lot of my different options, but just not something I'm willing to do. I want to be able to use my phone like I do now, which is 3 days of battery life, but something they might think about in the future. And like you said, they're thinking about new batteries. And when I think of that, I think of their new MacBook that they did, and they had to redesign the positioning of all the batteries and the shape of the batteries. So it's definitely something that they are looking into, and hopefully it goes into some of their new iPhones soon.
Okay. My number 3 is actually, wow, I did a great job of reading what Mike's were before I did this, but better crossover, which is part 1. So better crossover, obviously, when it comes to iMessage. I'm on Windows all day at work. Half of my brain is like, God, it'd be great to have iMessage there. The other half of my brain is also thinking I would constantly have it on, and that would just be really annoying, because when it's just my phone, I can just like be like, oh, there it is, click, done. Like I don't need to respond. It's fine. So for me, it's a back and forth.
Right.
But the other part of it is fewer required apps. I cannot stand, I know we've talked about having like the Apple folder or the folder of just crap that you try hiding.
Right.
To me, it should be a choice whether you want the news app. I feel like the news app shouldn't have to be required. I feel like find my iPhone, find friends. That's not required. You have to download it. iBooks. I'm sorry. 90% of people I feel like use Kindle.
Right. Oh, I totally agree.
To Apple, but what else is there that's on here?
But the point, I mean, I like your point of like, why are some on and some via the apps? Like, I would love to talk to one and know the reason why they put stuff on that you can't delete and can't get off versus other apps that I have to grab from the App Store. So yeah, no, I agree with you that makes zero sense.
Also, having the Apple Watch app automatically on your phone if you don't have an Apple Watch.
It's just a daily reminder to go buy one, Colin. That's what it is. It's just like, I see it every day. And
it's a daily reminder that I could have more space on my phone.
Yeah. Well, actually, to their...
it doesn't take up anything.
Yeah, I know. It's just settings, so. Dang, I thought I was going to school you. Dang. All right. No, but that's a good one. So crossover and required apps. I agree. I don't get the reason. And I also don't get why I play with things while I podcast. Like, I was on Jim's show, and someone was like, why do you
I'm doing the same thing right now. It's just underneath the camera.
Oh, okay, good.
I'm just messing with stuff right now.
On Jim's show one time, it was a pocket knife, and I didn't realize it. Like, I kind of flip it in and out, and someone in the chat room was like, whoa, Mike's taking this a little too serious. Like, this conversation get a little heated. So I was playing with the pocket knife. But anyway, you guys who listen to the audio, which is most of you, don't even know what we're talking about. But I'm fiddling with stuff as I'm talking. A pair of sunglasses, actually. So, all right. So my number 3 was when you set up a new phone, you need to have the option, I believe, to run a simple tutorial on using your phone. If you think about things like when you first install the ESPN app on your phone, if you've done that in the past, you notice that when you first get that splash screen, it's got little circles and arrows telling you where to tap on certain things to get different settings or stuff like that. The only reason I say this is because there are still new users coming over to iOS that would like a very simple walkthrough of how to do different things in their phone, especially accessing screens that you can't see and there's no button for. Swipe down to get your notifications, swipe up to get the things like Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and stuff like that. I was helping my grandpa recently on his new iPod Touch and my grandma with her iPad, and they got the sense of touching apps, and they got that. It was fine. There was no need for a tutorial there. But the things of like, okay, how do I turn down my screen brightness? I'm like, well, it's kind of swiping up and understanding that you need to start like off the screen and come on. Those sort of things are just not very intuitive. And I think they would benefit a lot from having at least the option, a skip now if you've already done this, or, hey, yeah, I do want the tutorial. So just something I think they do still need to put in there, something they've never really done, but I think would be beneficial to them.
And it's funny that I just thought of this while you were talking about it. And I know before the show, we were talking about it last week where I was like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
It would be nice if it was something along the lines of how Apple, obviously, how the MacBook does it, where in different settings, when you're trying to choose what you want, like a trackpad to do, it shows the person like 2 fingers,
That's
3
very
finger,
true.
or a 4 finger, and what happens when you do that. So they'll like push up, and then it'll cut up to the screen, and like all the things will go away. Wow, I have something in my hand.
Yeah.
But it'll like, so something like that, where you could always return to it. Like you're saying, like either you have it now or you can look at it later.
Right. And because that was a perfect example of like the scrolling when they switched and reversed the scrolling and threw everyone off for like the natural scrolling, whatever they call it. They have a nice little video that shows which direction you push and what way the screen moves when you do that. So yes, exactly something like that on the iOS side, because I think they do a decent job, and you can Google, and the computer's just more intuitive because the Mac is not as different as some other, if you've used a Windows and you come to a Mac, it's pretty similar. You can get around and it'll be fine. But for the iOS side, I think they need it.
Okay, so number 2, going on the battery case here.
All right.
And again, when it's coming to making me sound like, oh, like I just want things for cheap. I do, because I love sales.
Yeah. Hey, who doesn't like a good sale?
Yeah. My number 2 is making the new battery case standard.
Okay.
Once again, giving people the option. Do you want to buy this?
Right.
Adding on to while you're getting a new phone, is this something you'd like? Maybe sell it for $50, $75 even. Just one of those things where it's pushing more of the product, where it's just constantly getting people to use something new. I understand that for whatever it may be, the iPhone SE, I don't believe they have a battery case for that. They only have it for the 6 and 6S.
Yeah.
They don't have it for the Plus.
Right.
So it just doesn't make sense. I understand that they just have it for the one phone. I think they just have it for that one phone now, because I think they may have just been testing the waters almost, seeing if people were going to buy it. And I mean, it's doing better than any Mophie case was doing, at least from the people that I know who have bought it. They've said it's been 100% better.
Okay.
Than anything they had before. So
and that's that was gonna be my point with it, was that the problem is there are some fantastic battery cases out there, but the problem is people go on the cheap all the time. If they're looking, like I've seen a battery case, you look on Amazon, and batteries is one of those things you just don't want to mess with. You don't want to mess with power. You don't really want to waste your money, and that happens a lot. So I agree with you. I'm going to trust Apple. Theirs is going to work. It's going to work well with their phone. You know how long it's going to last. Yeah, no, I totally agree. That's a good option.
And with it kind of adds to your battery life thing, where I think the guy I know was telling me that he can go like 2 days before he has to charge the case, and then he'll charge it, throw the case back on, phone will be fine.
Right. Huh.
So, yeah.
Sorry, I am going to edit this part out, but I forgot to turn on. Oh, geez. There we go.
Forgot to turn
on Do Not Disturb on my computer. And the only problem with that is I forget the way I route audio now is that all of that is going to show up in the recording. So those chimes and all my notifications come right through into the recorder. So that's not really a good thing. So we got those turned off. But all right. So my number 2 now, I guess we're going on. So we compiled this list last week. And I had compiled this. We compiled it for last week's show, and I compiled it before the announcement. And so I said I wanted a speed up of the Apple Watch. I want better internals that makes it run faster. And I thought that was going to be answered, because I still believe that they were going to at least tell us what the upgrades to the Apple Watch were going to be. But they didn't do that. So I guess my wish now is that when they do the next generation Apple Watch, I don't have any complaints about the form factor. You could debate that back and forth. I have no problems with it now that I've been wearing it for a while. But really the only thing is that just the snappiness of the apps. When they release the next version this past fall, when they released the second version of Watch iOS, really the whole benefit was that these apps would run faster, and that they could run on the watch or on the phone, and they could really take advantage of however they wanted to run so that they could be speedy and snappy. But they just haven't done it yet. When I open up ESPN Score Center, it still takes about 7, 10, 15 seconds for it to kind of open, refresh, and all that sort of stuff, which at that point, the whole point of having a watch is to look and get quick access to stuff. I might as well have just pulled out my phone and looked and done it probably 10 times faster. So that's my only complaint with the Apple Watch, because I love it. I want to see them improve the speed, which can be done with software, but most likely they're going to need to update the hardware to get that snappiness.
How much of that has to do with the app developers, though?
I think a lot. I think a lot.
Because I think especially with ESPN, there are a lot of moving parts to ESPN's app.
That is true.
So that's definitely going to be one where it's going to be like, here's your speed, open ESPN, see you later.
Right. That's a very, very good point, because some of the other apps actually did get a lot faster with the new Watch OS back last fall, and they did get a lot faster, but they're still not as fast as I would like them. But you're right. There are definitely some apps where it's the developers and they are dog slow. So ESPN being the worst culprit of that. So yeah.
Okay. And we are now on to number one.
Numero uno.
My number one is we're just gonna keep the course here.
You are all about price, man.
I don't have that much money.
So. Hey, it's understandable. It's understandable.
So my next thing is dropping the price of MacBooks. That was a thing that I was kind of looking forward to in this previous update or this previous announcement, where each announcement recently, it's primarily been because they've been releasing a new MacBook, a new type, a new size. Last year it was the gold or whatever with the USB-C. To me, I understand that you're cannibalizing your product that way by like, we're dropping the price of this one, but we'd like you to buy the new one, whatever. Dropping the price of the new one after a year just seems like something to do, because from what I've heard, the numbers on what they've sold for the newest one weren't what they were completely expecting. The saturation of the market is just so high already that the amount of people you're going to get it to buy a new MacBook isn't low by any means, but it's not the people that you're hoping to target. It's going to be a lot of the people that can afford to do it right away, instead of the people who are like, well, I could get one this year or I could wait a year, kind of like with phones. I could get the new one this year or I could wait a year and see what they have next year. So to me, it was just, it was a hope. I wasn't looking to get a new MacBook by any means, and if I was, it wouldn't be the USB-C one. But it was just one of those little kind of tidbits that I felt like they just left out and kind of they're starting to leave people in the dust, I feel like.
Yeah, and price is always going to be one of those hard things to talk about, because they've got to set it. And the reason that they are able to do a lot of innovative things and stuff we probably don't even know about is because of their profit margin. They make a lot of money on these devices. I do agree with you, though. They could maybe have a lower priced option, kind of like you mentioned and some stuff on that, though. The problem is a lot of their low end options, they're coming out with new stuff. The new technology in them requires them to really up their prices on the device. So it might be a low end in terms of specs, but the new design and the slimness, they still charge a big amount. So yeah, that's something, it's hard. But, for those of you who are looking for, cheaper Macs and stuff like that, I have loved the refurb section on the Apple Store. So if you I don't know how to get there actually through the Apple Store website. I just Google Apple refurb and it's through Apple. It's certified by Apple. Those refurbs are fantastic prices. I have not actually bought a computer because I have not bought a new computer in a long time, but I bought an Airport Extreme through them. We've ordered an iPad through them for someone else, and they have been awesome. They're older devices, so you can go in there and look by year. You can say, okay, I want maybe 2 years ago's MacBook Pro. And that's the best part, is that you can get a Pro. You can get exactly what you want, an i7, i5, whatever you want. You don't need to compromise on the specs you want. And you can still, even though it's 2 years old, that's still a great machine and probably newer than a lot of the ones you're trying to replace. So I would highly suggest the refurb store. It's worked out well for me in the past. And because it's Apple, I tend to trust them quite a bit. Now, there are some other ones out there that you could think about. Gazelle now sells refurbished stuff, but when it's through Apple, I tend to trust it a little bit more, especially when you're still dropping a pretty penny. These things are not like thousands of dollars off, but it could be $300 to $400 off, which is kind of nice. Check it out. That's what we're looking for Hannah. She's looking to get a new laptop here soon, and we've been watching the refurb store, and there's actually a bunch of sites you can use to track the refurb store. So you said, okay, I am waiting for the 2015 this to pop up on there, because they're not all there and they run out of stock and stuff like that. And you can actually set notifications so you can get an email right away. So it's kind of nice. But yeah, okay. So my number one is, and just to let you know, so we have a few suggestions in the chat room, and then apparently Chatwing's not working for some people. So I've been getting messages. So we're going to bring in two different comments that we have for other people at the end of this. But my number one is I think they need to do a better job of explaining some of the really technical side of what they're doing. So Apple, obviously, when they do their announcement, they focus on big, huge changes that affect the people, that are very pretty and good, and those wow things of like, oh, look at what the new OS is going to do. Look at this, look at that. But I think sometimes they kind of ignore the high-end, techie, nerdy side of things. And when I say that, I don't mean that they ignore talking to us, but sometimes I think they need to take very complex things and dumb them down into, not dumb them down, that sounds bad, but make them simpler to understand for people. So case in point is System Integrity Protection, SIP for short. This was installed in El Capitan. So when you got El Capitan, you got System Integrity Protection. Basically, protecting the user from themselves, protecting the user from making changes to the computer that could be harmful to internals. Now, this did have a big effect on, certain drivers and stuff like that when you're talking about devices, or if you're installing a program that needs that sort of deep integration, then sometimes SIP can be the culprit to not let you do that. And you can turn SIP on and off. But when I talk about system integrity protection, it's something that I am still trying to learn a lot about. And I wish Apple kind of talked about it more, talked about these big things and said, hey, general public, by the way, this is something we introduced. Here's generally what it does. Here's why we have it. And that's that. So I just think sometimes they kind of ignore that. And I noticed, especially on Mac Geek Gab, they tend to talk about it a lot. I think the reason some of these big technical podcasts talk about it is because users kind of like me and Colin and some other people who are kind of like right in the middle there. We're not crazy advanced, but we're definitely not the just the basic user. We kind of want to know about it, and we want to know all the ins and outs about it. So I think they could do a better job of communicating that. Colin, is that something that even is like, am I totally off? Am I just kind of like, well, no one really cares about that, that's why they don't talk about it?
I had no idea what you were talking about.
Okay, so yeah, so maybe it's something that they don't need to address. Maybe that's too technical for some users, but I just think they can do a better job of it.
When it comes to things like that, sometimes those are the things that they should address in some capacity, where it's a lot of people are like, I just don't know.
Right.
For me, while I was like, I don't know what this is, and I kind of tuned out for a second, at the same time, I should probably better understand it and better understand it from the source. It's just one of those things where when you assume people just don't care, you won't either.
Right.
So maybe they should try not so much be like, here is everything, but kind of like filter it enough where it's like, oh, okay, I get it. That's
true. Yep.
So
exactly. So we had 2 comments from 2 different people that are not even in the same chat room, and they were all about the same sort of thing. So they're all about the MacBook Pro and bringing back certain things that they have taken away in the past. So PTD says that he wants to see an Ethernet port on the MacBook Pro, and I totally agree. Like that's a hard decision for me when I'm buying a new computer, is that this thing doesn't have an Ethernet port. Now, yes, there's, Thunderbolt to Ethernet and everything like that, but that's one more dongle I have to buy. So they took away some very key things on the computers that I think a lot of users wish they didn't. The other listener says the optical drive. For a lot of people, they still use the optical drive, DVDs, CDs, things like that. You go on a road trip, especially, and you want to put it in DVD. Some systems, if you think of education, especially in education, a lot of things are still only available via DVD. I still have textbooks in law school from this year that came with a DVD, and there's no way to download that from the internet. So if I don't have an optical drive, luckily, Colin's optical drive has been sitting on my desk for the past 6 months, and it's actually come in handy, and he hasn't asked for it back. So I've been okay.
You've had it for like a year and a half.
That's true. It's been, I think it was like my old apartment that I still had that. But, an external USB optical drive is nice. But again, another external thing that you have hanging off of your computer. So yes, I agree. They need to do that sort of thing. Another from PTD is that he wants to see the new keyboard that they put in the new MacBook into the MacBook Pro. I don't see why not. I don't know why they haven't. And maybe they are going to. Maybe they... that was one of those announcements that it was big for the MacBook, but I don't think it'll be some big announcement. It'll just all of a sudden show up in the new MacBook Pros. So certain features like that.
Keyboard?
It was the new technology with like how it's pressed down. So I cannot remember the ins and outs of like which one is which, but like there's like butterfly and there's all these different ways that the keyboard mechanically comes down and touches. And the new one on the MacBook is really just, it's enough response. You get that tactile response, but it's not really deep. It's nice. And I agree. When I was out there at the Apple store, I was playing around with it and I was like, man, this is perfect. I would love a keyboard like this. So PTD also says allow graphics card to go over 60 frames per second. This was something that actually he brought up on Home Gadget Geeks. I didn't know was a limitation on the Mac. I did not know that the graphics card on the Mac, a limitation is that they cannot go over 60 frames per second. So over on Home Gadget Geeks, we were kind of talking about why has Apple ignored kind of the high-end gaming sort of culture, and we talked about it over there, so we don't need to rehash it, but pretty much I was kind of talking about, well, Windows kind of has that on lockdown and building a custom PC, and I said even if I wanted to get a Mac Pro, right, the cylinder, the really nice high-end Mac, the RAM's like soldered to the board. I can't do much upgrading to it, so if I am someone that's looking for that, I'm going to go build my own. So some stuff like that. So this is why I love having the chat room and people messaging for letting us know what they think. So you guys come out and join us live to do that. But I still want you guys who are listening after the fact, if you're listening to this, think of some things and send them on in. Mike@2980network.com. Email me is the best way to let me know what you guys want to see Apple change. So I think it's a kind of a fun conversation because it gets you thinking about kind of the direction Apple has been going and where you want them to be going. So it's kind of fun. All right, so we are going to finish up with one tip of the week. Actually, before that, though, Colin, I've kind of been hinting about that you have thought maybe you might be looking at a new phone. Which one? Why? What got you intrigued?
Well, to start, what got me intrigued was just kind of looking for a new phone. That I've had one for the iPhone 5 for 3 years. I mean, it works just as well. At least I've never really noticed a difference in how it works in the time that I've had it. Some apps open just a fraction of a second slower than they used to. They obviously open a lot slower than the newer phones would, but just kind of looking for a phone that just has updated features is the big thing. What got me intrigued was Apple finally announcing, or not finally announcing because I didn't really care for the idea until I saw what it could do, but the iPhone SE, so their new 4-inch phone, which sounds weird to say their new 4-inch phone.
Right.
But the smaller phone that packs the same punch as an iPhone 6S. It doesn't have 3D touch, which to me, I don't know that many people who actually use it or use it to its full capacity. So having that doesn't make a difference to me. But just having a phone that, with all the new technology, such as the A9 chip, better LTE bands, better wireless bands, whatever it may be, Apple Pay, Play. Having the fingerprint scanner, I say that, it's not what it's called, Touch ID. Having those little things like that, and just having a phone that I know will feel a little bit more reliable because it's a little bit newer. I'm not going to be worried like the day where I turn it off and then I'm trying to turn it back on and it's like taking a second and I'm like, oh no. Just having that little bit more of a peace of mind where I don't have to be like, is this going to work if I accidentally drop it or if I plug it in and something weird's happening. There's just a piece of me that's like, I just want a little bit better reliability where the next time I update it, it's not going to crash and be like, nope, your phone's too old. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, and they addressed the number one issue that you had with Apple in like 4 of your top 5. The price is right on the SE.
Very much so, especially for the monthly, especially for the fact of the 64 gigabyte.
Yeah.
It's $17 is I think what we found, but that's Apple's price.
17, yeah.
So if it's $17 a month through T-Mobile, I actually yesterday canceled Hulu.
You're making room.
I'm making room.
Yeah.
I canceled like 2 other things, which were mostly just me being like, I don't need to pay for these. I don't utilize them enough.
Right.
Be done with it. Netflix is close because I'm not using it enough lately.
And if the price on a phone, if you can cancel out 1 or 2, services and be able to pay for a new phone, that's awesome. I mean, they came in at a very competitive price with the SE, and I called it last week. I said, I think this is going to be a major home run for them. I think it's a great option. I think of someone like my mom who has, I think it was the 4, maybe the 4S, but I think it was just the 4, and that size she really likes. Now, it's the operating system that actually is the reason she's not upgrading. But the SE would be a great option for her. It doesn't change size. It's got everything, the new, Touch ID and everything like you just said. So it'd be a great option for her when you're not having to switch sizes or get used to anything different. So it's a great option for a lot of people. And I would even be looking at it. If I was buying a new phone, it would definitely be at the top of my list. I have gone small. I've gone to the biggest possible. I wouldn't be sad about going back down to a 4-inch phone. This thing has its pains sometimes. Trying to fit this into dress pants for work. No, you've got to get the dad clip, right? You've got to get the worker's belt clip, because this thing, it just looks atrocious when you try and wear dress pants with it.
But the funny thing that you're saying about that to me is the biggest, I don't want to say gripe, but just the biggest downfall for all of the reviews that I was reading was the size. People saying that they were reviewing it going from a 6S or a 6S Plus back down to the 4-inch phone. And while they kept saying, they're like, man, it's great being able to text with one hand. It's great being able to just kind of like quickly throw it into pants, like you're saying,
right?
And not feel like, holy crap, this is taking up my whole leg.
Yeah.
But more just that sense of like, this is just simple. But then everything came back to things that don't matter to me, where I was like, I don't need a phone for this. They're like, it's harder to watch movies. Who cares? It's harder to read books on it. Not a big deal to me.
Yeah.
It's just, they were like, I would rather be able to text with two hands. I can text with two hands on this phone and it works just fine.
Right.
So it was just a whole lot of little things where I was like, these don't apply to me in any way. And everything great about this phone that they're saying is everything I would like.
Right. And then that's the hard part about these articles. Like, you're trying to make a one size fits all sort of review of this phone, when really it's a personal checklist for everyone. Yeah. And you go down the line of, okay, I had to give this up, but I get this, and this for it. Now, I would have to admit, I did, when I have picked up other people's old phones, my eyes are almost strained. Like, and that's not to sound weird, but it is. Like, you go from looking at this phone for a year, 2 years, and you look at a smaller one. It would take some getting used to, but I think I could totally do it. And the only reason I haven't in the past is because, the smaller ones are less powerful. Even between the Plus and the lower sized iPhone 6 and 6S, you go from optical image stabilization to the image stabilization being done in the software. So there's just features that usually the bigger phones had. So yeah, a few things. And to your point, totally, the 3D touch, I rarely use it. Rarely. I mean, I'm finding myself a little bit more on the keyboard using it for certain things, but it's a feature that I could definitely go without. And one that, even though I have it, I rarely use it. So, yeah. All right. So we're going to finish up the show with a tip of the week. And so the tip of the week this week is all about taking screenshot. All right. So taking screenshots with your Mac. Now, obviously, you guys know that we've talked about in the past the keyboard shortcuts for taking a screenshot. Shift plus Command plus 3, if you hold that key combination, it'll take a screenshot of the entire screen, and it'll save it as a file to your desktop. And Shift Command plus the number 4 will it'll turn your cursor into crosshairs, and you can select a section of the screen, take a screenshot, and it'll save it as a file to your desktop. Extremely useful, and especially that's built right in with a keyboard shortcut. But the one tip for this week is that actually, if you add the control key in at any point in that combination, so if you tap those and if you hit control right at the end or at the beginning, it doesn't matter where you add it in. If you add control in to whatever key combination you just did, it'll save it to the clipboard instead of saving it to a file. Now, this is just, I didn't know about it for the longest time. And a few months ago, I found it and I realized it, and it's just been a savior, because most of the time when I'm taking screenshots, I'm looking to put it right into something, and I don't need it actually as a file. I'm just trying to put it in the clipboard. So there's your tip of the week. Add in the control key to those key combinations, and you can save it to the clipboard. Colin, we came to the end of another week, and it was a good show. I liked that top 5. That was fun for me. We kind of got into, you can really dissect Apple without, we weren't ranting too hard on them. We're just looking for wishes. We weren't cutting them down, which is good. That was fun. I enjoyed it. Thank you so much to the people who are watching live tonight. I apologize if Chatwing is not working. Actually, that would make sense, because I can see we have more viewers than that in the chat room. So hopefully Chatwing was working for most of you, but sorry if it wasn't. I'll look into that for next week, make sure it's all running so you guys can chat along with us. Again, just a reminder, 2980network.com is where you can find all of these show notes, subscription links, and things like that if you want to follow along over there. It's the best place to do it. And again, this show is part of the Geeks Network. TheGeeksNetwork.com is a compilation of a bunch of different tech podcasts where you can go and find any sort of podcast that really can fit your tech fancy, whether it be home servers or home automation, gadgets, Apple, whatever you want. You can head over there. So head over there and check them out. And again, a thank you to WLMNradio.com for everything they do for us. So next week, we will be back. We will be here, and we will probably have another top 5, another fun one for you. So come back and look forward to that, and some more Apple news. We'll keep you up to date and always keep you on top of everything Apple. So we will see you guys next week. But until we do, tech on.